Welcome back, everybody. You are once again watching the Decentralized Tech live stream. This is the show where we talk about really how decentralized technology is changing the world, whether that's deep in decentralized physical infrastructure networks, whether it is DeFi, whether it's market making. We cover all of those topics here. And today I've got an absolutely awesome guest. I'm so excited that Scott, you've been willing to join us today. Scott is with a startup called Space and Time. They have been building killer technology over the last few years. I'm going to let Scott explain it himself because I don't want to fuck up anything on how awesome the platform is. Recently done a TGE. So we can talk about both of those aspects, like what it does, what the utility is, what people are getting out of it, and then what the token brings to the table. So the scope of this conversation is probably going to run wide. We can go with technology. I'm also just sort of curious to give a little bit of behind the scenes insight to our audience here on like, what does a TGE look like? Like a lot of people know what it's like to just go to an exchange, buy a token, but like building a TGE, it's a fuck ton of work. Like I've been doing it. I've been working on this for months now because we're doing our own in a few months, and it's kind of crazy what you have to do that. But anyway, Scott, let's start with you. Can we start a little bit with your own background? Like who are you? What brought you to this? And then we'll dive into Space and Time.
Sure. Yeah, I spent about a decade in enterprise data warehousing as an executive at a company called Teradata. Teradata is a Fortune 500 database company, and that was all about centralizing the world's data, like centralizing the internet's data into these big black boxes owned and operated by FANG, the Facebook, Apple, Googles of the world. So when I got into smart contracts in 2020 during COVID, was bored, had a lot of free time, like everyone, like the life slowed down a little bit, and I had some time to start writing smart contracts. And I was like, wait, where's my database? Where's my query engine? Or why can't I just like run a query on Ethereum that says, when a wallet interacts with my protocol, look up this wallet's balance and history and activity and everything they've done on chain and the loans they've paid off and the games they've interacted with and the NFTs they've minted, and tell me who this wallet is so I can tailor the experience to that user. Or I'm going to build my own little smart contract that's going to give rewards to my little community. And I want to reward the community based on, how many token, the amount of liquidity they deposited into my vault. Mm-hmm. Why can't I just run a little query that says, show me total amount deposited over time, and I'll reward them appropriately? I was just shocked that we couldn't do this.
From wallets where assets more than 1 million.
Show me all wallets that meet these criteria. Like where's that query engine? So coming from like a traditional database background, I was kind of surprised that didn't exist on chain. The closest thing we had at the time was Chainlink. So that was kind of the genesis of Space and Time.
So maybe let's distinguish that a little bit. You mentioned Chainlink. So I think a lot of our audience probably is familiar with Chainlink at this point. It's an online oracle for giving you things like pricing data and things of that nature. But that's still not like a database-like interface, right? So help everyone just distinguish that and what it's like for a product developer if you can't use like a relational database or any kind of database-like interface into this data.
Yeah, well, it's like building with an arm tied behind your back. So Chainlink's a very powerful tool for getting a single current data point from multiple sources where we come together and we find the average, or we find the consensus, or we find the quorum. It's great for getting the current price of Tesla stock. It's great for getting the current average price of Avalanche token. Just grabbing one single data point right this second, coming to consensus on what multiple reports claim it to be. Like I have 100 wind sensors in Florida. They're all capturing the speed of the wind right now. I can use an oracle to know right now, definitively, almost like cryptographically proven, what is the speed of the wind in a certain city in Florida where I have 100 sensors, because I can come to consensus on that and find the average data point right now. That's much, much different than actually processing data over time, saying, hey, show me all wallets in the last week that I've deposited at least $1,000 into my vault. That's a question that has to be answered by processing a little bit of historical on-chain activity, sorting through all the different deposits, finding all the wallets that deposited more than $1,000 and building that list. That's a much, much, much different process than just finding the average price of Tesla stock right this moment and delivering that. That's about current prices now for oracles. Space and time allows you to ask any question that looks back into the past a little bit. Hey, this wallet that's taking out this loan, have they already paid off loans? Or hey, this Beamable server that's delivering this ping information, let's reward it for all the work it did today. So query the last 24 hours of jobs that it completed, and let's reward it for that amount of work.
All right, Scott. So what I'd love to talk about a little bit next is then you've kind of described what the platform does. I'd love to connect that to the token that you've recently launched, just to kind of big picture out, like, what does that mean? While you're thinking about how you're going to respond to that, I see that we've already got the first 400 people have come into the room here to listen to this conversation. I really am grateful for all of you who are showing up to be participants in this. What we really thrive on this program is your participation and your questions. So I'm totally good with asking Scott a million questions, and maybe Scott will have one or two for me along the way. We can do that conversation, but things get really exciting when all of you come in with your questions. So we're probably going to bounce around to a few different places today. Some of it might get a little bit technical around what it is like to build a database-driven application and what it means from an application development standpoint to have essentially a database interface into on-chain data. I think that's really interesting in terms of just accelerating product development for on-chain data. We may also talk about like the whole TGE thing and what that's like. So there's going to be so much alpha in this program, but it's going to be even better if you ask your own questions and participate in it, because you guys are part of the market and you're curious about everything from games to applications to how you build them to what all this crypto stuff means. So please, ask on X, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on YouTube. Like, these are all the places we're going out to, and we're watching those. Oscar, who you see here, he's in the channel. He's going to be watching all those questions. He's going to be controlling the camera. He is literally the galaxy brain holding this whole conversation together so that I get to show up and turn my camera on and be part of it. But Oscar actually is the one who makes this work. So he's going to be watching. He will watch your questions. By the way, if you want to join live, we're crazy enough to bring in people live too. So if you have questions that you think are pertinent, have something on this topic, hey, we can give you a StreamYard link. You can participate in that as well. So that's always an option. But my name's Jon Radoff. I am one of the founders and the CEO of a company called Beamable. We make gaming infrastructure. So we're in the midst of our own decentralized tech journey where we are taking essentially game servers and building a DPIN around it. So the easiest way to think of that is DPIN is like Airbnb for some kind of computational resource of some kind. So instead of we, Beamable, owning the network or contracting with just an Amazon, we have a community-owned network of data centers around the world who are coming together to deliver the resources that game studios need to launch and scale their games. And right now, that's like a $35 billion a year industry, is just buying game server capacity for studios that need to scale. So that's what we do. So I'm hoping to learn a lot about other ways to approach decentralized tech. So as much as I have things to talk about, I'm here to learn too. And learn from you, Scott, because you just did exactly what I'm planning to do over the next few months, which is the TGE. So let's start with like the token itself. Like, what do you do with the token?
Yeah, so Space and Time, we just mainnetted in early May, about a month and a half ago. It was very hectic. I lost a lot of sleep, a lot of hair, but doing a lot better now that phase of my life is complete. Space and Time token, SXT, is a utility token that is used to pay for services, like pay for data, pay to insert data into tables secured by Space and Time, or paid SXT token to query data from Space and Time back to your smart contract or your gaming server or your app front end, whatever it may be. So we have a set of customers that are like using space and time as a database to power their analytics, their dashboards, their charts, their front end apps. And a set of customers that are building DeFi on chain or games on chain and querying space and time from their games or their DeFi protocols on chain. And finally, just like gaming servers that are actually using space and time as a database to like store, think of it as gaming outcomes. Like you got to kill, you earn points, or you got to win and you earn points. And those points eventually translate to tokens. So space and time token is the utility that these customers have to spend to use the database, to insert data into the decentralized database that is space and time, or to query results from it. We took a very I'll just say that the Space and Time Foundation, took a very liquid approach to our launch. We tried to, partner with as many exchanges as we could, both decentralized and centralized, and get as much distribution as we could. And I think we did a good job of that. So it's been fun to watch kind of just the amount of uptake of the network.
What's the biggest thing you learned out of the TGE process?
That
you're willing to talk about.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll say that.
Well, I'd say like there's a lot of like tech. It's funny because the entire time, like you're building your tech, you're thinking, oh man, am I way right curving it, mid curving it, left curving it? What am I doing here? Like, am I overthinking my tech when all that matters is marketing? Or am I overthinking my marketing when really I should be building my tech a little further before TG? Mm-hmm. I went through this kind of roller coaster of emotions around that. Of like, oh shoot, did we way overspend or way over engineer or did we delay our TG too long trying to bake our product too much or not enough? What was it? So where I landed and what I learned was there are certain things that are like non-starters for hedge funds, liquid funds, VCs, whales, larger investors in the space that have the ability to move the needle. And the things that matter to them are more around like, hey, what's the staking model and how does staking unlocks work and things like that. So I wish we would have had like our staking unlocks a little more further along, which we're polishing and finalizing right now. And then, I think that like the market is very fickle. You might have a great story to tell the market, but if you can't continue to kind of follow that up with revenue engagement, user engagement, continued, like, doesn't matter how awesome the first week is, people move on after a week in terms of attention span, right? Everyone's got TikTok 7-second attention spans. You kind of have to, really capture your community, but keep your community captured.
So a long time ago, I took a company public on NASDAQ, and it was kind of easy, to be honest. Like building the business part was hard. Like that took everything. Like we just had to build a business and generate just enough revenue, which by the way, was way less revenue than you need today to go public. Back then, we didn't need that much revenue to go public, but we were growing fast. It was like really high growth. It was like doubling revenue every year. So we were a good candidate to go public, and Deutsche Bank came along and they're like, hey, we want to take you public. And we're like, let's go. And then they just did everything. I remember I came to the office one day, I had to sign a stack of papers that was like this, like literally, like I don't think I can actually fit the size of it on the camera. It was like many, many reams of paper, and you have to like sign a bunch of stuff. So that took like an hour of just signing things one day. And then at a certain point, I had to go on a road show for like 2 weeks, and I pitched like 1 million mutual funds. Like that's pretty much what I did. And then we were public.
Right.
TGE is not like that. So I think some of the things that people don't appreciate about this process, and you kind of touched on one, like there's a whole technological aspect, right? Because it's different than launching just a share of stock is just a security representing ownership in your company. But tokens aren't like that, because they're utilitarian and they do something. They're actually a part of a protocol that has software that's going to have some kind of function that it performs online. So you touched on one aspect of it, which is the tech, just getting it far along enough, and also just realizing that there's a roadmap beyond that where you got to keep working on the tech. You touched on the marketing piece. Like, there's all this stuff around making sure the right people know about it and that you can be taken seriously, because the exchanges care about that. Like, how many wallets are they going to drive? I mean, really, my experience of exchanges is they pretty much just care about one thing, which is how much volume can you drive on their platform. So they're motivated by that, and they want some predictive metrics around it. And then there's all these technical financial engineering pieces. Like, you got to get a market maker, and they got to like set things up right, and that requires capital. And you got to set custody services up, and the meta for all of these things is constantly changing, right? So the tech meta is changing, the marketing meta. Like, just when you think you've mastered an aspect of what's going to be important in the marketing, suddenly the exchanges are saying, oh, this new thing is going to matter now. So like, that's a moving target. So I will say this is a hell of a lot of fun. Like, learning that much shit is a lot of fun. Like, I just love learning things, and trying to keep up with it is a hell of a lot of fun. So if you think that's fun, then you should go be a crypto founder, because you will have the time of your life. But it is a lot. It is a lot to keep up with.
Yeah, from people to working with exchanges to just like all the audits and security around your token, and getting that much to working with the community and any claims that you want to do, any distribution of the token. And there's probably 8 or 9 setting up a foundation if you plan to do that. There's probably 9 different buckets of work that go into it outside of just building your product or just building your business, independent of that. And there's all I became like a Tolstoy author. Like, I basically wrote a novel worth of content about the space and time protocol for exchanges, for liquid funds, for just like interested parties that were trying to learn more about space and time through this process.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of prospectuses that I had to write, like a lot of due diligence that I had to fill out of like everything about how the protocol works, and our kind of the income stream of the protocol, etc. So that was a lot of work. And across those 9 work streams, probably the most challenging was just like getting everything in place to ensure that market makers and exchanges and auditor and like our actual token contracts were all on the same page. Like, getting chain link bridges set up so the token can be bridged. Getting the like Binance did I think they called it like an alpha pool or a Genesis drop. Binance did some kind of early thing right before, hours before TG. And there's just so much to coordinate between the contract where the token's actually deployed and the market that's launching that token days, months later. And I would advise founders to take it serious early on. I mean, we probably spent 6 months planning, prepping.
Yeah, it's a lot. And there's no company that does it all. But I think that's good, actually, from a founder standpoint. Like, at the point when things are all figured out, I feel like that's where I don't really add as much value anyway. Like, markets and tech and things where like nobody really knows what's going on. Like, that's where I thrive, because I know I can get ahead and figure things out before anybody else has figured things out. So I love that, but it is sort of this interesting world. Like, I bet in 5 or 10 years, who knows what the real timeline is. Like, there will be a Deutsche Bank of like, oh, you're a company that's a good candidate to become on chain in some way. We have the 9 different business units for these 9 different buckets, and like, we just turnkey it, and you'll probably need like hundreds of millions or billions in revenue before they'll talk to you, which is kind of like the current IPO landscape. So it is really cool that there's this opening for companies that want to create tokens that can provide a little bit of liquidity, but a lot of utility. And like, there's still this stage where you as a startup really can do this. I think that's exciting.
Yeah, I agree. I think what does the Solana market call it? The Solana community calls it like internet capital markets, which I think is honestly a good name. It's what this market has become.
So we got a couple of questions coming in from the community here. King 7 Up wants to know, is it possibly the best of SQL and ZK? I'm not actually sure what he's getting at with that kind of question, because that is so different, but I'll let you think about how you want to react to that, because I see another question coming up first that I'll just like go with for the moment, and then we'll come back to SQL and ZK and maybe talk about just overall the relevance of like zero knowledge kind of technologies and how that applies to this stuff. But the question is around Beamable networks, decentralized infrastructure. So the answer to you, Nomisma, is game developers, first of all, they experience a lot of costs in building a game today. They've got marketing costs, they've got server costs, they've got development costs. And my thesis is that all of those other costs are big distractions, because all that your player cares about is how fun the game is going to be. And you can way overspend on marketing very easily, although marketing is something you do have to spend to scale it up. But your marketing dollars will be more efficient the better the game is, frankly. And then on all these other things like server costs and stuff, like the average studio is spending 20% of their top line, which actually isn't bad. Like Roblox spends 37% of their top line on servers. So like you can spend insane amounts. Roblox is a weird case because users there have no motivation to optimize their tech utilization. So you get like the worst built apps in the world costing Roblox 37%. That's also why Roblox takes like 80-90% of your economics. So there's a pure economic part. The second is risk, which is you could look at where you would have to go to, which is Amazon GCP or Azure today. And all of these guys have a history of pulling the rug out from under developers. We talk about rug pulls in Web3. Some of the worst rug pulls are from SaaS companies, frankly. If you build your whole company around a SaaS tech and it goes away, you might be out of business. Just like in the case of Amazon, they had a platform called GameSparks. There were 2,000 games on it. They took it away, and suddenly 2,000 games are scrambling to figure out where they go instead. Most of them just shut down. And the third is there just is no ecosystem for developing software on the back end of games like there is on the front end. On the front end, you have Unreal Engine, you have Unity, and those have big open source, community-driven ecosystems. And it doesn't really happen on the back end because everything so far has been so siloed. So decentralized tech, I believe, solves all these problems. You can distribute the data centers away from Amazon to community ownership, get to lower costs. You eliminate centralized stakeholders, which can wreck everything for everybody. And by having it open like that, you can also foster an ecosystem. So that's what we talk about on Beamable Network. Scott, feel free to talk about like what the advantage of decentralization is also in your platform, because you like, I think the headline of this talk is like trustless blockchain data, right? So you're playing a role within that. And if the SQL and ZK question is pertinent to that, go for it.
Yeah, the question that was proposed was, is it possible to get the best of SQL and ZK? That's what we did. That's what space and time is, actually. You're basically just describing space and time. We went heads down for about 3.5, 4 years and hyper focused on just one thing: the fastest ZK-proven SQL engine possible. So we built and invented a custom zero knowledge circuit from the ground up, built for performance reasons to be really fast and deliver cryptographic proofs of SQL queries fast. Why? Well, actually, it's similar benefits as to what Jon just described around decentralization for gaming servers. We get a huge cost benefit by running on commodity hardware because we're running NVIDIA GPUs when we're proving these SQL queries, which we can get from the community a lot cheaper than from centralized providers. But more importantly, and most importantly, the real reason we do zero knowledge proof in a decentralized network of servers is so that we can deliver the first tamper-proof database ever built. There's no way to really deliver a tamper-proof, cryptographically tamper-proof database to the market without having a network, a global network of validators that are all witnessing the data and signing it with threshold signatures as a group. All that means for the non-technical folks listening is you need a network of servers around the globe that are each redundantly witnessing and kind of notarizing the data and saying, hey, that looks good. I'll sign it. So now you've got this data that's been group signed by a whole network of blockchain servers, that the space and time chain. And now we can cryptographically prove, tamper-proof without a shadow of a doubt, that our data and our queries against that data have not been tampered. We can prove that our tables are tamper-proof. And what that enables is like, gaming servers to deliver like new games to deliver rewards to players that are very high value rewards and not worry about getting hacked, or new financial models around in-game marketplaces where players can sell goods and items and skins, and space and time can facilitate a database that holds all the metadata about those goods and those items that can't be hacked or can't be manipulated or tampered with. When there's lots of money on chain that's flowing through these games, there's a big incentive for bad actors to want to try to manipulate the game's database and mint rewards for themselves. Space and time uses decentralization really for security. Long answer just to say the reason we decentralize is so we can prove that we're secure.
So we have another question. We getting some Beamable network questions today, but I have kind of a related question for you around space and time. But the question here is like the Beamable network token. How does it change things in terms of allowing node operators to participate in Web3 gaming? But Archirion, the thing I would point out is that we think about our platform differently than like a lot of these like Web3 gaming platforms you might have heard about over the last few years, in that the gaming market, they're just the reality of the gaming market is it's orders of magnitude larger than Web3 gaming specifically. And I'm bullish on Web3 gaming. We have some awesome developers. Like we just launched FIFA Rivals, which is a game that's on chain a couple of weeks ago. It's probably the biggest Web3 game so far. But we still have a $200 billion a year gaming market, which is everything else. And those games aren't going away. They're not like single player experiences that have no economy are not going to suddenly become Web3 relevant, and those games are going to still be super popular for people. So DPIN, the thing that's cool about it is DPIN can address market need that is outside of Web3. So our customers are Web2 and Web3. Many DPIN projects are Web2 and Web3, even though the node operator side, that's Web3. So people who want to participate in the community and the economics of being part of creating essentially a business network that supports this particular use case, you get to do that as the Web3 kind of on the supply side, but the demand side can come from anywhere. They don't have to be crypto native. So my question for you, Scott, is how do you think about your customer base for this technology? Is it all crypto native people? Is that changing? Do you see it evolving over time?
Started super enterprise in the first couple of years of our company's development. Then we hyper focused on DeFi, on-chain projects that are purely startups building new financial instruments on the blockchain, DeFi. And now I think in the future, maybe like next year, we start to shift our focus back to enterprise, because DeFi is by far the most important market to tackle, but it is still a limited market. Like the size of the DeFi market is still a limited TAM. Whereas new incumbents start to enter the space, especially with stable coins, right? Like all the purchases and acquisitions by Stripe, Visa, PayPal, partnerships by MasterCard. And as these big financial institutional players come in, that'll create a new opportunity for us that I think will return our focus to like we used to be focused on. Because what it creates is a way for us to help them onboard their data to the chain. And that goes for enterprise gaming as well, AAA gaming, like helping these games onboard their off-chain data to smart contracts where some kind of economy is facilitated. Like all these games are going to build their gaming servers, their logic, everything lives off chain except for the economy, right? The economy lives on chain. And we help Space and Time creates a decentralized database that helps connect all this off chain gaming data to the on chain economy where payouts and rewards and capital is managed. Without that secure connection, then unfortunately you can have internal bad actors, like literally a game developer's own employees can log into that centralized database, mint themselves some rewards, and it really messes up the economy.
Game developers front running their own data systems.
Yeah.
It seems like there's a huge composability story around what you're talking about, though, because I'm also just thinking about all these new emergent sources of data online. You've been talking about DeFi, but I'm also like really interested in like prediction markets. And it just seems like prediction markets, if you look at prediction markets plus AI plus, any manner of front ends to those things, whether it's agentic AI or applications that are specific to particular use cases, like when you smush a lot of these data sources together, we're kind of building the global super brain on chain for sourcing a lot of data that could be useful for solving problems. In prediction markets, there's already things going on where like hedge funds want to use prediction markets data to hedge certain risks within a hedge fund. But in the future, like it could be anything. Like maybe in DePIN, we would use prediction markets to even do things like hedge pricing changes to electricity or something that data centers need to, which is the primary cost center beyond the capex that they've got. So like you could just imagine pretty wide ranging world as soon as like all the data is super easy to get at through common interfaces that can be queried with online software applications without having to do what you've had to do in the past, which is you'd have this whole mosaic of like API keys and sign up for different services. And you could kind of be one layer deep if your application accesses a lot of these services and pays for them directly. But with composable Web3 software, protocols can kind of build on top of each other, and the value exchange happens up and down the chain without even really needing to know anything about each other. It would
True.
Surely you've thought about composability in your platform.
That's like all I think about across a bunch of different vectors. Composability for the data sets themselves, for different verticals like gaming or DeFi or TradFi or social, especially. Composable data sets for social is really interesting. Gaming and social, composable data sets is the most useful because that's where you could have data that's shareable across different apps or different games. Also think about composability from the angle of financial composability. Like you can build like little economies or marketplaces that are composable across games. Like a marketplace that you build for one game is applicable to the other. And in a way, Beamable itself is an instantiation of this kind of, in a way, a marketplace of servers that are available. Mainly though, the tables themselves. This is something I'm thinking about a lot. All right. Entire games, new games can be built on tables that are publicly writable and publicly readable, ledger tables, if you will. If you stop thinking about the ledger of the blockchain as a ledger of financial transactions or balance updates, and rather a ledger of just any kind of data, just a table you can write to, that anybody can write to. And of course, when they write, the blockchain validates their signature and adds their signature to their write. So it's an extra column. So now we know who did the write, we know who wrote, and anybody can read. And we have cryptographic confidence of what we're reading, that it hasn't been tampered. Now you have this you can build tables that are composable across games that in and of themselves power the game. Here's a fun example. I'm freestyling this live as we think.
I'm freestyle next, but keep going.
for the first time ever, but like Scrabble as a dumb example. It's just the first thing that came to mind. So I was trying to think of simple word games where if you have this composable database, then different humans or AI agents can be, playing Scrabble against each other, but like writing turns, submitting turns directly on chain, and essentially like rewards would be near real time. And like you can then have other word games built on this kind of like composable data set of players, their scores, their out, like, like how within a genre of gaming. You could do the same thing for first person shooters. You could do the same thing for card games, etc. Sorry, John, you had an idea as well.
Well, so when you said Scrabble, I loved that idea because here's a common problem in on-chain gaming, and there's a bunch of people thinking today about how do I build games like entirely on-chain, which is essentially to say like you have on-chain data persistence of everything relevant to the game state, and then games just sort of exist as this client interface to that data. So one of the challenges with that is the problem of asymmetric knowledge. So, for example, I can play a game, a chess game is quote unquote easy to implement entirely on chain because both players know 100% about the game state at any time. You can see all of the data and nothing's secret. But in Scrabble, it isn't, right? Scrabble, you might be muted, Scott, but in Scrabble, we've got some private data, which is my hand essentially, which is the same thing as like poker. So like whatever your whole card is unknown to other players. How do you
this should probably be coined as an official term called the poker issue. The poker issue is well understood among anyone in the crypto space who's built games. And John is doing an awesome job beginning to describe the poker issue. Yeah. And John describes it as an issue of, I forget the exact word you use, but asymmetric knowledge is perfect. John calls it asymmetric knowledge as the Giga Brain. I call it the poker issue as the left curve.
The whole card problem. Yeah.
The poker issue is this. For a provably fair coin flip or card flip, for a provably fair drawing of a card by the quote unquote dealer smart contract, technically all the validators that execute that smart contract to do that kind of provably fair card flip, usually via like a verifiable randomness function, unfortunately, would expose that to the world via a public blockchain milliseconds before all the players would get to really see it. So like there's asymmetric information being shared. There's really no way to hide the flip of the card so that the fastest server or like the fastest client can see it first and operate with that information and potentially even predict the next card ahead of time, because it's just very hard to hide things on chain. And John's describing an even worse issue, which is that you don't know if players are using tools like on the web, like you don't know how they're cheating or how they're cooperating together or how they're using AI, or if they even potentially see the next set of letters coming their way on the blockchain.
Yeah. Is there a way that the data itself that we record just ends up being encrypted for the session and the different clients, I don't know, they share there's some kind of signing authority during the process, but we actually store the encrypted data so that you find out within the game client, but it's not, we store the encrypted data on chain, but I don't know if I'm making any sense here. I'm freestyling and trying to think through how to solve this problem in real time. The problem is one of, you essentially have to encrypt the whole card or the Scrabble, your Scrabble hand, or the stack of the cards in the blackjack deck. Like these are all the same problem, right? Which is you can't know those secrets in advance.
Yeah, it's unfortunately, this is going to turn into a long conversation, but the short of it is encryption is the solution, but unfortunately we can't do that. Like that's not a practical solution. That is, you're 100% right, John. That is the solution. Like if that were If that were available, we would use that to solve the problem. But
Mhm.
unfortunately, it's not really available because smart contracts can't really hold private keys and decrypt, right? So you can't really work with encrypted information on popular chains like Ethereum or
Mhm.
Solana. And so you can encrypt data before you store it in space and time. True. Yes. You can encrypt, you have a verifiably random server that generates the next card flip and stores that in an encrypted state. But you still have to decrypt somewhere. And unfortunately, you can't decrypt on chain. And thus lies the problem. So usually it gets solved by redesigning the game or not building that specific game on chain. Like usually people just decide to build games that either A, don't have asymmetric knowledge issues of randomness being available to validators who are watching it. Like don't build games that require private coin flips, private card flips. Or B, if it's an asymmetric knowledge issue of like two players colluding, then don't build games that allow you to earn by colluding. For example, a one-on-one game where the house takes a small cut, there's no such thing as collusion. It's one-on-one. So if you collude, you're just giving the house money. Or like, and you could try to do this on the opposite end of the spectrum and create games where there's like 100 players, but then collusion is almost guaranteed. In like a battle royale, you could get like 30 players that create a little guild and fight together. All I'm getting at is this. Oh yeah, someone commented on my teeth. The funny thing is, I've had to go through a lot of pain, braces, and then Invisalign. So it didn't come easy, as you know. Well, I'm rambling to say this: what game developers have done on chain is really just steered clear of anything that requires private coin flips, private card flips, private randomness, where a turn can't be shown to certain players ahead of time because there's just no way to hide it on chain.
Yeah. Okay. So, game servers with private data protection might still be needed for a little bit here. Yeah. Well, so here's the call to action. We've got over 1,000 people watching. So if you are one of these people who loves on-chain games, come join this program next time, because I want you to tell me either how you solve the asymmetric knowledge problem, the whole card problem from poker, or tell me how you don't care because there's so many awesome games you can build without that, and we can lean into that. That would be a fun conversation for an hour. Or if someone knows one of these guys that's building on-chain games or fully on-chain, there's now like a couple of chains out there that are actually promoting the idea that they exist for fully on-chain games. So I still scratch my head on that stuff, and I'm curious what that ultimately will mean. But yeah, there are plenty of games like chess that we could do where every player knows all the information, and obviously no shortage of really fun games that could be implemented like that.
I think Scrabble. I think Scrabble would work as long as you don't mind players using AI to help them, which would kind of defeat the purpose. But there's no collusion issue and there's no asymmetric information issue on Scrabble.
Well, you have your own set of letters, and knowing what letters your opponent has would allow
Oh, duh,
you.
you can't hide your opponents.
Yeah. So if you know your opponent's Scrabble letters, then you'll do things really annoying, like block their best word.
Yeah. But then you've perfectly summarized what game developers are doing. Jon just perfectly explained what would happen on chain. A game developer would just build a new game. Like, all right, it's modified Scrabble where you can see your opponent's letters and block them. It's basically what every game developer is doing.
Exactly. Like that is actually a good way to think of it, which is when the problem can't be solved, you start thinking about, well, how do we make the game fun like that? Kind of the same thing with trading markets, by the way, which is if you look at what Magic the Gathering did originally. So Magic the Gathering trading card game where people collect the cards, and they said, well, what if we just have a game where people do trade the cards and do whatever they want? Now you have a deck building game, and that means that we lean into this idea that the creativity around the deck and everybody's trading and going to stores and buying cards, like that's just going to be part of it. And they kind of created a whole game around that. Then you had like, if we go to the digital world, you have all these early MMORPGs, including like World of Warcraft, for example, where they said, well, we're not going to allow players to really trade a lot of the content. In fact, we're going to try to make it so people aren't even like, if we find out that you go to eBay an item, maybe we ban your account for that. So then they had to like fight that. A lot of the Web3 people who've come along have kind of returned to that Magic the Gathering thinking, where it's like, well, people are going to trade anyway. What if we just lean into that? Like how and how do you change the game design that such that the game is now more fun, that you recognize that essentially liquid trading is going to happen anyway?
Yeah. The trading angle of it makes things 10 times more complicated and more fun too. I'm changing the subject here a little bit, but like, that's to me most exciting angle of crypto and Web3 in general, whether gaming or any app development, is that when you build specifically in the crypto space, regardless of what you're building, you're always thinking about the economy and like the on-chain trading aspect of your business. Like you build a game, you think about the gaming economy on chain. You build a social app, you think about, okay, well, how do I pay creators? You're saying like this, it's just it makes you completely rethink about what you're building. In Web 2, you don't do that. Like in Web 2, you don't go build a social app thinking, okay, first things first, I need to reward my creators in crypto. You know what I mean?
I think about that a lot around what we're doing in DePIN and just DePIN generally. Like I think where DePIN is leading, at least with compute resources, is the idea that compute itself becomes a liquid asset class, right? Kind of like energy is today. And you can have different categories of energy, but ultimately energy is actually a pretty liquid market today that is in fact traded, hedged against, et cetera. With compute, it's not like that right now. Like for the most part, if you want compute, you go to Amazon, you sign up and lease servers, you get access to it. Or if you've got a DevOps team that can sort it out, you lease like bare metal servers on a longer term basis, and then you just figure out how to build on top of it. Like that's how you harness compute today. But in the future, I think there are so many data center operators that have access to compute. If you just aggregate them together and package it in a way that turns the compute effectively into an asset, then first of all, people who need compute, they'll just provision compute off the internet according to cost and like whatever asset, like I think it'll be like cost and SLAs and like whatever the key parameters are that you use for deciding whether you want the compute. Cost is one. There's some other things that are more technical that you take into account. And then you just provision it and you use it. And that's different than the market today. Like data center operators are essentially in the business today of like building out a bunch of capacity and then finding tenants. It's like a real estate business. You got to fill up your capacity with tenants, and then you start adding more and more capacity, and you kind of have like a CapEx strategy, which is you fold back your revenue back into more CapEx and just keep building it out and building it out. That's compute today. But like you as a tenant should actually not care that much where your computer is. You'll care about latency, but you shouldn't actually care where the computers are. It could be sourced from anything. It should be more like energy where you can select it from anywhere. And then once that's done and it starts becoming more liquid, then you start having things like hedging the cost of compute or fractionalized new ways of fractionalizing compute and things like that. And it's ultimately compute does become like a form of energy where I just sit in front of my computer, build any application I want, and you turn on the faucet for your application, and you don't have to go through this labor intensive process of like setting up your machines on a particular service provider.
Yeah, well said. I think you stated it perfectly. like Space and Time is essentially a DeepIn project too. People don't realize this, but we're functionally a DeepIn project like Beamable, asking the community to onboard commodity hardware to run databases rather than gaming servers. And we should have built with that economy in mind from like day one. So I totally agree.
Scott, I want you to kind of tell us a little bit about to just bring it back to Space and Time a little bit. Like, what's on the roadmap? What are some of the things that you're focused on building now that the TGE is a little bit behind you? Before we get to that, Rosinate, thanks. Your mention of the season. So we're running our leaderboard across different seasons, and people are competing to ascend the leaderboard and gain points towards an airdrop that we're doing. And I'm really thankful for everybody who's participating in that, because you guys have been so helpful in just amplifying the signal around Beamable. Like, so many people know what Beamable is now. I go to a conference and people are like, "Oh, you're from Beamable? I've heard about that." And that's cool. That was not the case a few months ago, where I was still trying to explain to people what we do. So I know that many of you are looking for today's code, so you can go over and do the /claim on our Discord. Hopefully this is not the first time you're hearing about this, everybody, but we are doing these code giveaways in live streams. You got to be registered on our Discord. Start doing it right now. Go find the Beamable Network Discord, get validated, get ready to put it in. But the code today is Cosmos, COSMOS. That's the word. It's on the screen. We'll put it in chat. It's going to be in the ticker going along the bottom. If you're just listening, COSMOS. Enter that and try to get a little bit higher up at the leaderboard so you can claim that airdrop spot. It's going to be super relevant soon because we're moving to TGE before the end of the year, hopefully well before the end of the year. All right, Scott. So we talked about like problems you've been solved, where you are. We've taken these really awesome digressions into asymmetric knowledge and all that stuff, but where are you taking the platform?
Yeah, I think all of our focus going forward is all generative AI vibe coding. We did a lot of hard work to build a new vibe coding studio for creators that are not like really super technical or don't want to bother, writing new smart contracts that use our queries. Well, just make it really, really easy for creators to build games, web apps, simple little mini apps that use space and time data, use our tamper-proof database, read and write to it. We're launching kind of an early version of that in about a week. It's been a long time coming. We're really excited. And the whole goal is to put more workload on space and time chain and make it easier for more apps and more games to get built. And I think ultimately we need to integrate with Beamable to make it easier for those game creators to deploy.
Look at what Faizy's saying here. He's right in there. He's like, how do you get off? I don't even know what. That's a good question for our team. I don't even know what the underlying architecture is. It's not on.
Yeah, I'll help John. I'll guide John to decentralized Valhalla.
We'll put a ZK-based system on it. It'll be provable on chain. Everybody else.
The real answer, the short answer, Faizy, is that we can help Beamable handle trustless rewards to all the different server operators by space and time keeping track of all the data of all the work that all these different Beamable servers did. We can reward them appropriately in a trustless way.
Actually, it is a super interesting use case. Thanks, Faizy, for bringing it up. So I'll tell you a little bit about my own vision for where we take this leaderboard stuff into the future, even post TGE. And maybe I think a lot of you will be hearing about this for the first time in this call. So it might be a little bit of alpha on this, but we sort of accidentally stumbled upon this dimension of our questing platform, which is that it could benefit not only us, but it could benefit the customers on the Beamable platform. And I thank the community and all of you for like proving this. But what I'm talking about is this thing we announced the other day that we're calling Beamable Boost, which is we just discovered, like, what if we just start making quests on our platform for some of the game studios that are launching games on the platform? And we'll give you guys some points for going and signing up for these games, trying them out, buying things in the games. And for us, it was just help the games on the platform, because that's a virtuous cycle. If the games do well on the platform, then they need more Beamable. Beamable does well, it means we can invest in more R&D, all of that. So like, that's great. We were blown away by how powerful this was, which is, you guys, first of all, you proved that it wasn't just a bunch of bots on the questioning platform, although there were lots of bots and we fight that all the time. Thanks for putting up with that. But like, there's real stuff too, because you guys were buying stuff. You were wish listing things on Steam. You were minting, like we did Pog Digital one. You guys minted over 100,000 NFTs for Pogs. And that was like, you paid for that. Like, those weren't given away. Like, so these were real things that were moving the needle on really important metrics for a game studio. Game studios care about Steam wish lists. They care about game sales. They care about, if you're a Web3 game, they care about their NFT mints. And you guys moved those metrics. So I started to think, we can't make this just like an airdrop hunting TGE thing. Like, somehow we have to figure out how that virtuous cycle continues into the future. So we're definitely going to continue something where we are going to keep rolling out quests for games on the Beamable platform, and you guys will be able to earn in a fair way for helping to move the needle for game studios, again, because of the virtuous cycle, and you're helping people on the platform. So we will do that, but it raises, to return to FaZe's original question, like, how do we evolve that over time? It strikes me that if we can move that out of sort of the centralized SQL database running at a server at Beamable and start making that on-chain data so that everybody has transparency into it, like, that would be super cool. So it feels like it should actually become part of the Beamable protocol. Like, there's some aspect of helping games on UA and things like that we could start to leverage.
I agree. That makes perfect sense. I think you're way ahead of me, Jon.
I'm riffing and I'm just spitballing product management in real time. So that's one of the benefits you get out of tuning into my live streams. You get to hear me just start to talk out loud about things we might do that you're not going to get picked up from blog posts and stuff like that. Scott, so we're kind of coming to the end of our hour. What should people know about Space and Time that they didn't hear so far, and where should they go? Oscar, I see, is rolling the URL, so everyone can go check it out there.
Yeah. So at Space and Time DB, at Space and Time DB on Twitter or X, depending on how you identify. And we'll be announcing our AI studio for creators coming up real soon, like in the next week or two. So if you have app ideas and you want to start building on chain, but you're not particularly like a super experienced coder. In fact, if you've never coded a single line of code at all, boy, do I have something for you. You start building your own game, start building your own app, deploy your game to Beamable, deploy your app to Space and Time's data. Use Space and Time as your database backend. So we're excited about that. Follow us at Space and Time DB to get updates.
Yeah, I love this vibe coding aspect, because that's kind of touching on how do you wrap, like that is the composability stuff I was talking about earlier, which is, if you have the data sources readily available within the coding environment,
so easy to build up on top of those data sources. You can build an app so quickly.
Right. Like, right now I could vibe code it, but I'd have to go to pick your favorite LLM. I'd have to say stuff like, write me some code that sources this data and brings it. Like, you can skip all that, because that's kind of crap. Like, that, you don't actually care about that as an app developer. You care about what it does with the data, and you want to focus on that and make the access easy, right? So that's composability. But the last thing I'll add here, guys, is like, and you've been listening to this, there's so much bullshit in Web3. We all know that. There's people who launch things. There's no tech. They're just speculative, like, ideas that people never really end up building things. Scott's company has built real stuff that you can use and see today. So there's not enough, highlighting of the people that are actually building the hard tech that does things. So definitely check out Space and Time. I know most of you probably already know about Beamable. We've been doing this for 5 years, helping game developers. We've got 100 games launched on the platform. So like, these aren't hypothetical things we might do on chain someday. They're like actual real things that have a potential to change markets and just solve problems for people and save people money. So check out both of us. Check out Space and Time in particular. And I just want to thank you, Scott, for being here in the conversation. There's nothing more valuable to a startup founder than your time. And you took an hour of it to hang out with us and listen to some questions and spitball some cool ideas. So that was a lot of fun.
Happy to. Great to see you again, John. Really appreciate you having me on. You guys are awesome. Beamable is another project in this space that's actually building real tech. That's a net good for the space, actually working hard to build some useful technology that game developers need. And so I'm always excited to partner and work closely and spend my time with people like John, who are like working really hard building another heavy hitter builder in this space that I respect. Appreciate you guys.
Thanks, Scott. That's really kind of you to say. Until next time, everybody, thanks a lot.